Yes, it is, and welcome back. Monday, March 23rd, 2020. As we head into hour 3, we moved him to the final hour, the third hour, final hour today for this Monday. Usually he joins us in our second hour. He'll return to that next week, but we always check in on Mondays with the great Brandon Weichert. He of the Weichert Report, theweichertreport.com. He's a geopolitical analyst and author. His most recent book is his upcoming book, Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower, due out this fall. Looking forward to that. Brandon, happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing just fine. I want to pick up on the subtitle of your upcoming book, How America Remains a Superpower. A lot of us are kind of wondering how good we're going to be in a few months. I think we're going to be fine. I'm worried about between now and those next few months. You talk to me, buddy.
Well, in general, so the upcoming book is by the way, we just got the cover art.
Oh, good.
So it's really good looking. So I'm excited about that. But
good.
The upcoming book is all about one of the main framing points is how a majority of American and British students today dream of being YouTube vloggers and social media personalities, whereas a majority of Chinese citizens, and this is from a poll done last April, majority of Chinese citizens, young people, dream of being astronauts. And this is a problem. And this is a cultural problem. And I know Peter Thiel has talked about this a lot, and I know there's been a sort of a strain of thought that I'm picking up on the right, about how culturally we have stopped believing in ourselves and what makes us great. And if I may segue this into what's going on right now with the disease outbreak or the response, it's not just in space that we're seeing this, where, of course, space was sort of the final frontier where Americans, the new frontier where American dreams would be, built in the stars, whereas opposed in the past they were built out in the far west, and now we're moving up to the stars. It's a sort of a place where dreams go to be made reality. The vaccine or the quest for a vaccine for the COVID-19 strain and sort of the initial national response to that crisis, sort of shutting everything down, telling people we're no longer in the old paradigm, while it has been very dangerous economically for us. This was the sort of thing that we used to do when there was a real crisis. And make no mistake, I know the death toll is relatively small as it is recorded right now, but the potential danger of this disease is an existential threat to our system, which is why initially the administration was responding the way it was, by saying social distancing and people who aren't essential for work need to stay away, and we basically shut down status quo for a while to prevent the spread of the disease. That is actually, I think, a sign of national greatness, that we can do that and still kind of keep our chin up, and I think most people are. My concern is that there are mixed messages coming not only from the Democrats, of which there are many of them. My concern also is that we have an entire coterie of people in the electorate who are rooting actively for the failure of the country, clearly. But also, unfortunately, I just watched this press conference the president gave, and I'm very confused, and I'm an analyst. I don't. On the one hand, he opened up by saying in a few weeks he was going to lift the restrictions on social distancing, except in high-risk areas like New York or Seattle. But then on the other hand, he was asked, and if Fauci and the medical team think that's a bad idea, will you listen to their advice? And he said, yes, I'll listen to their advice, and I'll definitely take it under advisement. To Americans like me who have a family, and we've already made arrangements now of not being, of basically being with the kids and sort of doing the stay-at-home thing, a lot of Americans now, if they're watching that, are probably very confused. What do we do now? And so that is sort of the concern, and this has been a decline, I think, in terms of national greatness, because we used to be able to respond to these things with consistency and vigor, and now it seems like it's sort of this haphazard response, and it's going to make the situation worse, not better.
Interesting. Okay, so in a column you published today, you talked about our political system and crises before and since. The bailout of 2008. Yes, the bailout of 2008. Right. We have tendencies to exacerbate our socioeconomic woes rather than ameliorate them.
Yes.
That is how you wrote it. Those were some of the lessons you drew from '08. We don't tend to learn well.
No, and actually this gets also back to my book, because in my book I talk about the threat of a space Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And if you actually look at why Pearl Harbor happened, it did, when it did, the way it did, we're kind of replicating the same mistakes with certain countries like Russia and China today, and we're kind of in the similar pattern. And so, yes, in regards to '08, we made certain decisions that were made. Maybe they were wrong decisions outright, and we stuck to them when we shouldn't have, or they were the right decision, but they were made too late in the game, and then So we make these similar decisions, and we repeat the mistakes in future crises, and I think that pattern is very much at play right now, and I think that's a sign of the times. It's also, I think, a sign of our political system, which is very short term.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really like to kind of plan and stay with something, especially if it's politically potentially painful.
Right. No, none of us can deal with none of us want to deal with pain, and yet we know that in a crisis in our family, much less in our country, we're going to have to deal with it. I think what is most angst-causing, certainly from the calls I'm fielding from my listeners, I'm sure the people writing you and asking you questions, are twofold. One is how much worse is it going to get economically, and how long will it last?
Right.
The unfortunate thing is we just don't know. Now, if I take the president at the word I want to take him at, it takes me to next Monday. That's the 15-day marker. Yeah. No, this is the problem, is because he, and I say this, as you know, as I'm a diehard Trump guy, but I'm also somebody who analyzes systems. Yeah, sure.
And the problem is, and I'm somebody who's deeply affected personally by this economic, thing.
Yeah.
So the problem is that he is sending mixed signals now. I don't know if you did just see the press conference.
I didn't.
I watched the whole thing.
No.
I'm very confused.
I was doing my own press conference. Slightly less smaller, slightly smaller audience, slightly smaller state.
It's probably for the best, because we're all very confused over here. And he's saying that he wants to maintain the social distancing, but then he wants to reopen travel to what it was before the crisis started, even though we have no vaccine. And while I'm very optimistic about this malaria drug that they want to use.
Right, chloroquine with erythromycin.
The problem is, though, they're still testing it. And so, this whole thing of wanting to push back the economy online, I get why he wants to do it. The problem is we're going to have a bigger economic crisis and then a bigger political crisis for Trump with his reelection if suddenly we go back to normal and then this disease propagates everywhere. And then the medical system is overburdened. It's already starting to break in places like New York and Seattle, and you can multiply that out everywhere as this disease propagates, as travel returns to normal, and as businesses reopen. And so there'll be a near-term, short-term boost. But if this thing gets out even more than it has, because we're not respecting any social distancing, you're going to have a much bigger problem on your hands. You'll have economic downturn plus pandemic in the United States, plus Trump losing potentially in November. And let me tell you something, Joe Biden as president would be the biggest disaster this country could ever have. And so whatever mistakes Trump's making, I say this as constructive criticism because I want him to win.
Right.
Because I know that the recovery under him would be better than any kind of recovery under Biden, which would only benefit the wealthy. So the president needs to get, I think, a better talking point list and stick to it, because now I'm looking at this, I'm very confused by, are we reopening or are we going to stay in shutdown mode? And if we reopen, that's going to bring with it, without a vaccine, that's going to bring with it a huge problem here for most Americans that long term will be even more devastating, I think, than whatever economic fallout we're going to experience from this shutdown.
It's an odd position to be in when you're the president, I would think,
It is.
and you're being told you're doing too much and you're doing too little. You were right to point out something interesting Steve Bannon said this morning, which is maybe we're still thinking even too small financially.
Yes,
I got to take a break here, Brandon.
Yeah.
You're good for a little while, aren't
I'm
you?
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as usual, you're wonderful about your time, and I'll invite callers to weigh in with us as well. We'll be right back with more from Brandon Weichert, he of the Weichert Report. And if you want to ask Brandon a question, 602-508-0960. We're both here for you, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibson Show. Delighted to have Brandon Weichert with us, he of the Weichert Report, theweichertreport.com. We have him on every Monday because there's no substitute for brains, and he analyzes everything to within an inch of its life and does it well. And what I like more than doing it well is he does it clearly. Brandon, you were talking about the president's press conference today on the last segment. That went perhaps less than pellucidly clear, kind of trying to find the balance, I suppose, as I've been reading reports of it, between the concerns people have and not wanting to go forever, right? This in contrast to his was it his last press conference or the one before that, where he was talking about the benefits. I guess it was Friday. Was it Thursday or Friday? Where he was talking about using chloroquine with azithromycin, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
I think I am, azithromycin, and getting beat up for that. Nonetheless, people who are usually respected by the broader culture, they play doctors on TV, and they are real doctors, people like Mehmet Oz, etc. They've said they've read the reports in places like France, and the outcomes are looking really, really good for things like that. And perhaps the people making fun of the president about this were the ones, or will be the ones with egg on their face.
Yeah, and if you read the Weichert Report in the last few days...
Yeah, I'm looking at yours, Why All the Anger, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love the a la carte approach. I think you should be trying everything until you find something that sticks. And I like it. I liked what the president said on Friday. It made perfect sense. I suspect the reason he came out today so confident about, his initial claim that, we're going to start removing the restrictions in a few weeks is I think he's figuring that the Z-Pack and the chloroquine combination is going to be as he said, the silver bullet. He said that on the Friday press conference, and of course that caused Fauci to kind of gaggle. Mm-hmm. But he might be right, but they're still testing it is the problem. The issue is medically they're not going to push this thing at the national level unless the president signs an executive order saying that you have to forego normal testing phase and just do it, or they can do the tests and then release the data. I suspect this will work. The problem is, though, it's a management protocol.
Right.
And my understanding is it's not an actual cure, which is fine, but that means you're now going to be living, and I wrote about this when this disease first broke out in China. I was saying when it gets here, you're going to have to understand there's a new paradigm now to life. It's normal life plus COVID-19 season, just as you have normal life plus influenza season. Mm-hmm. It's a new disease. It's a novel disease. It's going to mutate and adapt. Something else to consider that one of the people...
As does the flu. As does, right? This is the problem with the flu vaccine. This shouldn't be too surprising.
Right, yeah. Yes, this is what I was just going to say, is that University of Minnesota Virology Institute, one of the nurses there I spoke with, she said, even the seasonal influenza strain, it's no longer quite seasonal anymore. We now have summer strains. She said it's becoming, the quote she said to me was, it's becoming quite competent in resisting our attempts to stop it from infecting us. And so the problem with coronavirus 19 is that this thing is extremely novel, and it's highly infectious, and I have a feeling that it's already mutated in China once. I have a feeling that as the longer this is in the system, it's going to continue to mutate, and it's going to require a lot more, I think something closer to a vaccine, which is why I hope the president doesn't let up on pushing for an actual vaccine to this, because we need it.
Now, before I get to calls, let me give out the number 602-508-0960. Before I get to some of our calls, Brandon, another question, and God bless the audience for thinking long term, because that's optimistic, natural optimism. We'll get through this, but let's think long term. Once we're through this, reevaluating everything we have to do with China. You have become a space expert over the years, and you know what we had to do with Russia. But we never farmed out to Russia as much as we farmed out to China. Unwinding from China will be a bit of a chore, but it's got to be a priority, no?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's 2 points. The first is with Russia in space, we have farmed out. This is a huge part of my book.
Okay.
We have farmed out a lot of our space launch infrastructure to Russia, which is another aspect of the book. It's a national security threat. We don't have to get into that here right now. But similarly, and we have started to try to reclaim those capabilities over the last 5 years. The similar thing at a larger macro level with China is that the whole supply chain goes through China. They sit at the hub. And they were threatening, and I think you and I spoke about this before, they were threatening during the trade war in December, before there was a deal announced. One of the Politburo members announced to Xi Jinping his idea of cutting off antibiotics to the United States, because most of our generic antibiotics are made in China. And, of course, Xi poo-pooed that idea, but this has come up again in the context of the COVID-19 outbreak, where now the Chinese are on the defensive in the international press because it's the Wuhan virus. And it is, that's what it is.
Yep.
But they don't like that, and they don't like any questions about the potential Chinese origins of this disease. And so one of the things that Xi has done is to hint he might be open to cutting us off from much-needed pharmaceutical, not just antibiotics, but pharmaceutical equipment in general, because we have a lot of hazmat suits that are made there. The parts for the ventilators that we need so desperately, many of them come in from China. And there's already a delay on getting them from China. And so, the logistical supply chain in China, we need to decouple as quickly as possible. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
And my concern with the president's press conference tonight was that, hey, it looks like he's going back to the way things were. And one of the reasons I voted for him was to not keep doing things the way they were done from 1991 until 2016. I wanted a new paradigm, and part of that means reindustrializing the heartland and bringing the supply chain, if not back to the United States, then much closer, and diversifying it so no one country can sit atop the chain as China has done. And
makes us reliant upon them.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely right. Good thoughts, Brandon. Dave is in Surprise. Dave, you're on the line with me and Brandon Weichert.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the call.
You bet.
The thing that I'm confused about with the current process is, how do we get away from the minority ruling at this point? Because it seems Nancy Pelosi flies in on her Learjet and totally breaks down our complete system, and it's the working Joes that are going to pay for this, literally and figuratively.
Good. Right. That's every time there's something important that has to be done, important business that has to take place in America, we realize that what we learned in Schoolhouse Rock wasn't true, Brandon. You don't need 51 votes. You need what's called a supermajority. Oh, what? I got to take a break. Can we do that when we come back?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Right. I'm Seth Leibson. He's Brandon Weichert. We'll be right back. We're going to restore Schoolhouse Rock rules to Washington, D.C. I'm Seth Leibson. He's Brandon Weichert. 602-508-0960. Be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibson Show. Delighted to have Brandon Weichert with us, as we do every Monday. That's Miranda Lambert. She really changed country music for the better, but we took a big loss, Brandon, with the loss of Kenny Rogers. I'll take him or her any day, but man, did he define several decades of our life, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was sad. I mean, the Big Lebowski alone made him more than just a country star, and it made him, cross-cultural lines.
I don't even think people, rightly said, I don't even think people hearing that song in the Big Lebowski, I just checked in to see what, go ahead and you can go out with it, Bill, if you want to just check. I don't think they even knew that was Kenny Rogers. I think they loved the song and they looked up and they go, holy smoke, that's something called the First Edition.
Because then when you look into him and you find his other songs, you think, oh, he's really good.
Yeah.
And,
this guy can sing.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, what a loss! It's
very sad.
What a loss! What a loss. Brandon, we had a call right before the break. You've worked in Washington. You've worked on the Hill. Yeah. And whenever something important needs to be done, it's just an odd thing. Whether it's the nomination, not anymore, but it used to be the nomination to the federal courts or the Supreme Court. Yeah. To this kind of thing, it's like, what? We can't do it with 51 votes?
Yep.
Well, we could up until about 1915, 16, 17.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Well, basically, I blame a couple people, Woodrow Wilson and the Democrats, for creating this, creating this institutional need for supermajority. And we all know why that was done. It was to ensure that the most radical elements of the progressive agenda could not be resisted by the majority, which is what Dave, the previous caller, was referencing, I think. Mm-hmm. This has been now ingrained in Washington, groupthink. I blame Senator Mike Lee and people like him on the right. I'm really PO'd at those people who refuse to entertain any notion of changing that rule for fear of the day when the Democrats are back in the majority and what they may do. That kind of hypothetical thinking really bothers me, because now we've been in the majority. We had a real unprecedented opportunity from 2016 until 2018 to really do some stuff. And now we here we are again, where we have this major crisis, and we could have easily gotten the will of the people through, and this would have been a non-issue. But because of, as the previous caller said, because of a radical minority trying to get the Green New Deal into legislation through backdoor means, now here we are with this stupid rule allowing everything to fall apart. This is not what the framers intended. This is not what the Constitution says. And I'm very annoyed, because I remember when this issue came up a couple years ago, Mike Lee was leading the charge on the Republican side about not letting the supermajority get lost out of fear of what might happen when we're in the minority again. And I think that was so irresponsible. Life's about taking opportunity, and that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I think, for the right to really push through an agenda that would have fundamentally, positively changed the country to make it comport more with the will of the people. And we're now, in this position where there's a real national crisis, and a handful of radical leftists can isolate and prevent the will of the people from going forward because of it.
Yeah, I've always thought it cheap politics. We can't do X because someday the other party will have it. Win. Right. Win. Do the right thing. Good policies are, to me, the building block of good politics. And I don't think we should have artifices built into the system, right? Madison complained, and the Federalist complained. He criticized the notion of supermajorities in the Federalist Papers as things that exhort unreasonable indulgences. You can see that right here with the elements of the Green New Deal. Talk about unreasonable indulgences. That's exactly what it's being used for. Right.
Yeah, and then, I saw on Twitter...
There's nothing in the Constitution that requires this. Again, this didn't happen until, surprise, Woodrow Wilson.
That's right. And I saw something on Twitter, I don't remember who it was, but somebody commented, if only the Republicans negotiated in legislation the way that...
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Because there would be no educational department. There would be no, if only we took what our what the most partisan grassroots activists want us to do the way the left does, we would have our agenda pushed through all the time.
Joy Pullman, I think. I got to hit a quick break. We'll be right back. Here's a little Kenny Rogers. 602-508-0960. Call in. Brandon and I happy to take your calls. We're talking to Brandon Weichert from the Weichert Report. You want to be smart, you want to check in. He produces a lot. TheWeichertReport.com. WEICHERT is how he spells his last name. Brandon, The question most people are focusing on, we're all becoming, I suppose, economists and political philosophers on the hurry here, which is what's the right balance? And this is the question we all struggle with. You saw in my monologue I was talking about proportionality. We're all kind of struggling to find it. And we don't want to cure worse than the disease. Thank goodness the president is saying that too. Social isolation, smart, but then also comes with its own dangers too, the kinds of dangers we've waged other wars against, right? Whether it be drug abuse, whether it be domestic abuse, that kind, suicide, that kind of thing. What's your political philosophy hat telling you underneath?
Well, philosophically, I think you are nailing something on the head. The problem that I'm having is systemically, and maybe it's because I think that systemically the medical system is not going to be able to handle if we have a full outbreak across the country.
Right.
And I heard Steve Bannon mentioning this yesterday, and I completely agree with him on Maria Bartiromo's show.
Yeah.
I think we need to go bigger, and the president should have been bolder. I think that we should have had a national lockdown, National Guard imposed. I think 5 weeks. I think that because the steepest curve is going to come in mid-April, where the pandemic is supposed to be at the worst. We needed to have everybody social distanced, period, until that period is over. And it looks like, I live, where I live, I can see the main road in my neighborhood, and I'm up till 3 a.m. every night working. I see cars bustling down, everybody, at least around here, I don't know many people who are in Florida who are respecting social distancing.
Is that right? Really?
Right, yeah. The beaches, they had to forcibly close because people were going there en masse.
Wow.
Until about 3 days ago.
Wow.
Then you've got New Yorkers flying down en masse to Florida, and everybody's telling New Yorkers and New Jersey, you can't leave because it's the highest rate of infection is up there, and so they're coming down here. And so I'm of the mind that we should have shut down the air travel. We should have shut down basically everything for 5 weeks. And get through that, and then do not $1 trillion. And I know philosophically this is not what we want to hear, and I understand the arguments against. But I think $2 to $3 trillion stimulus, flood the system. It's going to blow up the balance sheet, but you're going to get through this thing. You'll have flattened the curve, and that way the medical system is not swamped. Because if the president is serious about reopening everything in a few weeks, that's going to be right around the time when the disease is at its most virulent. And I'm just worried about, this thing swamping the medical system. We already have 157 million Americans with chronic illnesses. So now you're talking about those people needing to have regular care on top of regular illnesses with, whatever seasonal disease is going around. And then you're now throwing in thousands and thousands of people with COVID-19 infection. Hopefully the Z-Pack chloroquine combo works. We'll see. But I'm just going off the data that I have now. And so I can project based on that data and what the medical community generally has been saying. I think we should have been doing bigger, bolder to get through it faster. Rip the Band-Aid off quick. This is how you do it. That way in 5 weeks' time we can then actually reopen, and we can actually we'll have flattened the curve.
The reason so many of us will complain about that or push back on that is because of where we are exactly right now, which is half measures. It's because we haven't done that, but we're doing half measures, right?
And
on the one hand, that makes eminent sense, but you can't have a situation, which is what we have now, where Blackstone says, Blackacre, as they say in law school, Blackacre says we're closing down and we're having stay-in-place orders. But if you want to travel to Whiteacre, go right ahead. They'll take you. We can't have the half measure.
I live by the airport down here. I'm still seeing flights coming in.
Right. That's the problem.
I'm just shaking my head going, are we in social distancing or not? Because
did you see the pictures out of Atlanta Airport yesterday on Twitter? No. My gosh, it looked like Grand Central Station times 10.
And here I am, the DOD shut down travel. Part of my income is doing speaking engagements for the DOD to brief them, and all I know show that I'm taking a financial hit.
Right.
Doing this, I do real estate investments down here. We've taken a financial hit because of the stop orders coming from the government. The problem now is the federal government sounds like they're reversing course and saying in a few weeks they're going to reopen. But then I've got Alachua County and the state of Florida telling us, no, we're locking down even more. Massachusetts locked down. Ohio's locked down. So it's very confusing to me as a citizen. And I know as somebody who analyzes systems, I'm telling you, I think the Bannon approach, while it is drastic and philosophically I don't like it as a conservative, I think it will get us. I think it's the least worst of all bad options. And the president sounded like he's not open to that. And I think that's actually bad because what that's going to do is, I think, prolong the issue. And then when the infection rates go up, across the country, he's going to get hit politically for that. I know he's going to get hit for the economy politically, but you're going to have that anger, plus the fact now people are going to have to find child care again, who are now planning to take off work. You're going to have to go through this whole reversal on an everyday level. That's going to annoy people, and that's going to impact voting habits come November. People aren't going to forget that. And so I'm just looking at this systemically and saying I think Bannon was it was a radical solution, but these are radical times. And I think we should have done something closer to that than what it sounds like the president is doing, which is to basically kind of act like it's not that big of a deal.
Brandon, God bless you.
Thank you.
Until next week.
Yes, sir.
That'll be our 15 days. We'll commemorate.
Yep.
See you later.
I'm hoping the president ends up being right, but we'll see.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.